Thank you very much, Nilay, for this very valuable presentation. I think it was very clear and all the questions has been answered. So it will help also to the other potential applicants to, to register in PADR and then later to upload their proposal in Prospect. So, okay, let's proceed with the budgeting. So, from current slide. Okay. So basically the budgeting is it's not compulsory to do the whole budget now at this stage, in the concept note stage. But I think it is very, very important for you to know how the budget should look like, what are eligible, what are ineligible costs, which are the main budget headings of the budget, and basically what you will have to prepare once if you will be invited to submit the full application. So let's start. We have some general remarks. So as I said, you need to have only an indication of how much does your project cost. So you don't need to submit the budget, but you need to submit the grant amount that you are asking to be financed. So the design of the action, which is presented in the concept note, should be repeated in the full application stage without major changes. So don't overpromise and do make an indicative estimation of the cost, because we will see later on what are the provisions in the guidelines that which changes can be done until certain %. But try to be as precise as possible at this stage already. So you should propose a realistic and cost-effective budget related to implementation of planned activities. So it is very, very important to stress that each cost that will be proposed in your budget in the later stage will have to be closely connected with the activities from the description of the action. So all your activities needs to be connected with some costs and vice versa, if those costs are eligible to be financed. For the eligibility criteria for the costs, we have had a session during yesterday. So there is a list of eligibility criteria for the costs. Of course, you cannot have an intention to gain a profit of any kind. So a profit is not eligible and it's not allowed under EU financing. So in the budget, you need to reflect both the costs which are covered from the EU grant and from the co-financing. It's not that you are presenting only the cost that you're asking from the EU to be financed, so the EU contribution, but you consider and you budget your action as a whole. So you will have the overall total budget, which will consist of EU contribution and your own contribution or contribution from other sources. In that sense, it should be realistic. It should reflect basically all the activities that you are planning to propose in your project. So the co-financing may take form of the beneficiary's own resources. So you can have self-financing by your own resources and other donors' funds. So when we say other donors, okay, other donors can finance, co-finance your action, but we mean really other donors, not EU or EU-related donors. So income, or you can finance, co-finance by the income generated by the action, and financial or in-kind contributions from third parties. But we will go in details later on. So as we mentioned yesterday, co-financing is accepted under this call in the form of volunteers' work. So we basically had the whole slide yesterday, but just to recall, so up to 50% of co-financing can be acknowledged through valorization of volunteers' work. Basically, each day worked by the volunteer will be valorized in line with the European Commission guidelines, which is 78, I think it's 78 euros per day, but you have the link there and all the information in the previous slides. Some co-financing, additional co-financing stipulation you will find in this section of Prague. So these are some terms, but we will go through all of them later on. So just for you to see with regards to costs, how many different terms under grant contract are. Okay, so basically the budget consists of budget headings. Under each budget headings, there are budget lines. And the first budget heading, and sometimes a very tricky one, is the one related to the human resources. What does it mean? Human resources are the staff assigned to your actions. So the project team, like project manager, project coordinator, maybe some financial manager, maybe some procurement officer. If you have partners, of course, it will be valuable in the team to have a person, coordinator or manager from the side of your partner, and even the financial officers. So their salaries or part of their salaries, if they are not working full-time, will be eligible for financing. And this cost of staff should correspond to their actual gross salaries, which includes social security charges and other remuneration-related costs, excluding performance-based bonuses. So bonuses of any kind and additional payment on top of the salary is not eligible. So, for example, okay, just to stress that those salaries should not exceed those normally borne by the beneficiaries. So basically, you will have to present, for example, last 3 pay slips or salary statement, however you want to call it, to calculate the average salary that will be put in the latest version of the budget. And so basically, this salary should not be changed, you know, taking in consideration the fact that you are now having a grant and then you will have more work or something like that, and then you can increase the salary. No, that is not allowed. So your staff of your CSO, for example, can work, you know, regularly, full-time, and dedicate part of the time. It's usually part of the time. In some cases, there is a need maybe to work 100% only on this project, but basically in reality, it is to be expected that not full-time dedication to the project will be needed. So you will see if you think that 50% of the working hours is enough to coordinate the action or to manage the action, or 70%, you will see when you will draft this budget. But I just want you to know that your regular salary will be taken into account, and you will have to prove through the contract and through the timesheets and through the bank statements that exactly this salary was contracted and paid to your staff. So no overtime work in the sense of everyday overtime work on top of the salary. It considers to be bonus, and it's basically not eligible in any country to work overtime through 2 years. So it's not in line with the national legislation, which is also one of the criteria for the eligibility of costs. So everything that you do basically should not only be in line with the contract provisions, but should be also in line with the national legislation in that area. So this is just one information with regards to per diems, which are also part one budget line under budget heading 1 human resources. So per diems are not considered as a simplified cost option, but they will be reimbursed and they're considered as an actual cost. What actual costs mean? That basically you have an estimation in your proposal, in your budget, which will be part of the grant contract, that is an estimation. So, for example, if you plan to print 100 copies of some publication, that doesn't necessarily mean that you will have this 100 copies. Maybe you will have more, maybe you will have less, you will have to reallocate. But anyhow, the price of the printing should be based on the market price, current market price. But as I said yesterday, you will start implementing this project in a year or even more. And when it comes to the publication, maybe it will pass even 2 years. So you don't know if the market prices will be changed. So that is basically allowed. You can change even the unit cost if it is reasonable. But anyhow, you will be reimbursed on the basis of your actual cost. So actual payment to the printing studio, the invoice and the proof of payment will be considered as the final eligible amount, not the one that is in the budget. The same goes with the salaries and all the other costs. Second, the budget heading is related to travel costs, where you need to separate international travel and local travel. So international travel is if you are traveling abroad. I don't know, maybe you use train or airplane, so it should be separated. If you need to go to some conference abroad, if it is part of your action and really necessary for the implementation of your action, or local travel. So here in Cyprus, so you can either use your own car or you can use your organization car. So on the basis of that, there are some different calculations, but anyhow, this travel cost should be separated. Then under this budget heading, we have also equipment. These are the purchase costs for equipment and supplies specifically dedicated to the purposes of the action. And the ownership at the end of the action should be transferred in line with this article of the general conditions. So general conditions are basically the ruler of your future contract. So many very important provisions are set there. And for local office, cost for local office, if you're renting an office, it is allowed to ask for for the payment from the grant budget for the rent of office, even for the maintenance or office related costs. But in that sense, you need to think that not the whole rent would be eligible, because most probably you are not working only on this project. So if you're working on other projects or if you're working on some activities that are not related to the project, you need to calculate how much basically people or time is dedicated to this project, and then put some percentage on the office rent. It is not obligatory. So if you're paying your office rent, or if you have your own office, which you don't pay, of course, those costs are not eligible, and you don't need to ask anyhow for this cost to be covered from the grant budget, but it is possible. And as I mentioned, cost of consumables. So those are some costs, not coffee and and some juice or whatever, especially not alcohol. So alcohol is never allowed under grant projects, not even conferences or seminars or any such events. But consumables, so paper, pens, and things like that. Then we have budget heading 5, which is other costs services. Here is the stress on services. So as I mentioned yesterday, for some part of the action, there will be a need to procure external services. So it's basically similar to you're buying some equipment, some supplies, but you can also procure some services as well. So these are costs which are deriving directly from the requirements of the contract. So usually it is related to this dissemination of information, evaluation specific to the action. So the evaluation costs of evaluation of the achievement of your project, of the success of your project at the very end. Audits, so expenditure verification, which is obligatory for grants above 100,000 euros. So grants, again, I repeat, I mean EU contribution part. If the EU contribution part is above 100, which is basically not the case under this lot, it is not possible because this is maximum. So expenditure verification will not be obligatory for this lot, but certainly it can be for other 2 lots when we have maximum of 200,000 euros. Then the services of translation, reproduction, insurance, etc. Also including financial service costs, in particular the cost of transfers and financial guarantees were required according to the contract. Anyhow, there is also a list of non-eligible costs, so you should always take a look in this list if some costs that you might propose in your budget are not eligible. Okay, they will be excluded anyhow before the contract signature, but better for you to have them excluded immediately. And one of the very important costs are the one related to the communication and visibility activities. And they should be properly planned and budgeted at each stage of the project implementation. So you should always take these activities as a very important one and to budget all the relevant costs with regards to those activities. So after these budget headings, we have a budget heading or budget line related to the indirect costs, which are basically eligible, provided that they are not included in any other budget heading. So indirect costs are the ones which are not directly related to the implementation of your project, because all the costs which are directly related to the implementation of your project should be budgeted under budget heading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So indirect cost, in case if you don't ask for coverage of your project rent of project office or some related consumables, then these costs can be budgeted under indirect costs. So you should not, for this cost, they could not exceed 7% of the estimated total eligible direct costs. So this is the total eligible direct costs that are on the bottom of the budget table. So the maximum is 7% for indirect costs, but certainly this percentage can be reduced depending on the activities that you will have, depending on if you have budgeted rent of office and some office supplies already. So you will cover those indirect costs within budget heading 4, and then this percentage can be even decreased. So be quite realistic, try to be realistic when you propose this percentage for indirect costs. Because you can be asked to justify this percentage which you have requested before the grant contract is signed. Okay, I said what are indirect costs, but they are not related to the implementation of the action, but they are incurred by the beneficiaries in connection with the eligible direct costs. So what are important issues with regards to the budget? That you should envisage translation if there is such a need, if you are not in position to draft by yourself the report, which can be quite extensive in English, because they will have to be submitted in English. The language of the call is in English. So even some parts of supporting documents, or even either the whole supporting documents, for example, employment contracts, they cannot be provided only in your own language. You can provide them in your own language, but you need to provide a translation that does not have to be official translation. It can be free format translation, but anyhow, all these important documents, even maybe some parts of the invoices and things like that, if it will be required, you will have to translate them in English. Just to stress that partners, associates, or affiliated entities cannot be also contractors under the project. So, as I mentioned, for the delivery of some services, as like for the visibility services, for example, or some survey, you can even procure an expert to do a survey or something like that, or study. So you are allowed to do so, but exclusively with external experts. What does it mean? You cannot procure your own staff, neither from the lead applicant, neither from the co-applicants, or neither from partners, associates, and affiliated entities that are nominated in your project. So neither them as a civil society organization, for example, neither their staff can be procured and engaged through this procurement process as external experts, because the word is saying by itself, it's external, it's not the one from, because if it's somebody from the part of your staff, then you will be able to include them as your project staff, and part of their salary can be also eligible for financing. So in that sense, you don't have to have only project coordinator and financial officer or project manager in the project team. You can also have some experts, which are experts in the sector, in the field, and part of their salary or whole salary, if they will work 100%, which is basically not usually the case, but part of the salary will be eligible for financing it if it will be envisaged in the budget. Okay, so there are some procurement rules I already mentioned in Annex 4 of the standard grant contract, which will have to be followed. there are some procedures that could be quite demanding and not easy to understand if you don't have previous experience. But anyhow, please bear in mind that that you will not be in the possibility just to go and buy whatever you think it's relevant, or to engage a friend, a colleague, or whoever you might feel that it would be valuable, but you will need to have a process of selection. So you will probably need to have at least a selection of 3 candidates. So you will have to invite 3 candidates and then evaluate their CVs, their experience, and whatever you will find relevant, and put in your procurement documentation. So it's a process. So just bear that in mind. For the contingency reserve, these are basically costs which are used only in some exceptional cases like force majeure. And you, if you will budget the contingency cost, then you will need to justify the usage and ask for pre-approval of the contracting authority. These are non-eligible costs, so I would not go reading in details, but please refer to non-eligible costs, because if you propose them, they are not eligible for financing. They will not be put in your contract anyhow, so don't even envisage them. Okay, so as we mentioned, the maximum that you can ask from the EU contribution is 100,000 euros. Minimum is 30,000 euros. And these figures are set as maximum for EU contribution to a project, not as total budget. So I think I already explained that. You should co-financing in minimum 5% of your total project budget. So you will have to provide an estimate of your budget. However, bear in mind that the contribution and at full application stage may not vary from the initial one by more than 20%. So you can adapt the percentage of co-financing within the minimum and maximum amount. It's from 60 to 95% of EU contribution. But your contribution will not be able to vary from the concept note estimate by more than 20%. Now we will have an example. What is this 20% change? Maybe it will be more clear. So in the first column, you can see in the concept note stage that you have proposed the total eligible cost, 77,000 euros, out of which 60,000 euros you ask for EU contribution, which is, you can see in the bottom, 77, almost 78% of the total eligible costs. And for other contribution, you have envisaged 17,000, which is 22%. So either from your own resources or from other donors or through volunteers' work are similar. So you come, to the phase you are invited. We hope so, that you will be invited on the second stage, on the second step, and you have to submit the full application together with the budget. And when you made more detailed calculations, or maybe in the meantime, because even almost half year can pass through that stage, until that stage, and you just realize that you need to change the percentage of co-financing. And for example, you need to reduce the total eligible cost. You overestimated it. So for example, you are now ask 70,000 euros. EU contribution still remains the same, 60,000. But of course, your co-financing reduces to 10,000 euros, which will which will represent almost 15% of co-financing. On the other words, EU contribution will be 85% of your total budget. And we are still fine with this because you stay within the allowed range from 60 to 95. But on the other hand, if you increase the total eligible cost and you increase the EU contribution, so you ask for 80,000, but out of that you ask from the EU 77,000, which is more than 95%, then your application will be automatically excluded. So take care of this threshold. Okay, this short quiz we had yesterday, but since we have postponed this budget session for today, I don't know, maybe if we have some new participants, maybe the link for short quiz can be shared again. If you just want to test your knowledge, there are 15 questions, so you can select the answers. And at the end, you will see if you have answered correctly or not. So there, I would advise you to just to play a bit. It will not take more than 10 minutes of your time. So I don't know, maybe we should have a break or we should continue. I don't know. Alexandra, what do you think? We have some questions, yeah? Should we answer to the questions? Please, Alexandra. Advise what to do.
Yes, we have some questions. I am now collecting them in the Word document, so I would suggest that we answer these questions and then we can make a short break after this. Let me just see if something has been asked in the meantime.
Anyhow, thank you for collecting the questions. It's much more easier than to look in the chat.
Okay. Again, I will share my screen. Okay. There you go. So, Ivana, you can read the questions and answer them, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. Are there any set of guidelines for the calculation of each applicant's salary for the lot 1? Currently, as far as I know, there are no specific guidelines, but you will have to calculate. So first of all, it needs to be your regular salary. And out of this regular salary, you will have to calculate the hours or the days spent on each month of the implementation. And you will put them in comparison with the total possible hours or days work in that particular month. And you will calculate the percentage of work for each month. So for example, if in the budget you envisage that your project coordinator will work for 50% during the lifetime of the project, it doesn't necessarily mean, and it's not even realistic to expect that this person will work each month 50% of his working hours. So maybe at the beginning, he will work even 60 or 70% of his working hours on this project, but maybe, you know, in a couple of months' time, he will work for 40% of working hours. So it's basically, it should represent the realistic work, the real work. It is usually presented in the timesheets. So for each day, for each month, for each day, you will need to put the hours worked, or, okay, the hours worked, just to make it more simple. And then the description of the activities that you were providing that day, that you were doing that day. In that sense, at the very end, you should not surpass this 70% that you have envisaged, or 50%, sorry, in this case, 50% that you have envisaged in the contract. There will be some possibilities for reallocation if there will be such need, but let's stick now to the contract. And you will calculate for each month this percentage. So 1 month you will maybe work 42%, then next month you will work 70%, or then 62, and then 50. At each percentage for each month, you will multiply with your gross salary, and you will receive an amount, and you will have to present it for each month, the salary. We will certainly have this Q&A. We will include this question in the Q&A set that will be published by the contracting authority, and we will try to explain it as easiest as possible. Okay, how does the grant allow us to plan or calculate the travel costs during the implementation stage of our project? So you will have to present the activities. So if those activities are connected with some travel, you will have to envisage basically all the costs that will incur during the whole implementation period. So in certain way, it's not easy to envisage how many meetings, for example, you have, how many times you will need to travel through Cyprus, from the Turkish Cypriot community to Republic of Cyprus, or vice versa. But you will have to envisage, for example, 2 meetings per month. Project team will meet. Maybe you will meet online. It's very common these days. But if you want to have in-person meetings, you will have to envisage, for example, 1 meeting in person per month. Your action lasts for 12 months. Then you will envisage 12 times travel. You will go to some web page, I don't know, Google Maps or via Michelin. You can just check the distance, and then you will maybe you can budget it only through the number of kilometers that is envisaged for such local travel. If you are planning to have a participation in some conference or seminar abroad, you will see the market prices, reasonable market prices, like you are buying a ticket in a month in advance or something like that for this destination. And you will say, okay, you will have also the very, very important second sheet of the budget. You will see it in the template, where you will have to justify each cost. So how many participants do you plan to have on this trip abroad? Then you will check, the market prices, and you will put some average cost of returned airplane ticket or train ticket in the value of this unit cost. So yes, sometimes it will be hard, to envisage everything, but you have to go activity by activity, and then to see how many travel it can include, which transportation means. For example, if you are planning to have a seminar, probably you will need to organize the transport. You will need to rent a van or rent a bus for the participants. It is also eligible. And you also need to consult, for example, 3 companies who rent buses or vans, and then you can calculate some medium average price per day. And you need to have basically a clear picture, and you will have to present it in the justification of the budget. How many participants, why you are renting a bus, and how have you come up to this unit value. So you will have to say that you have contacted 3 providers. You can even name them, or if you can find such information on the web, you can also explore web pages of such service providers. And then you can put the links of the web pages that you have visited and that you have calculated the average prices for such costs. Okay, shall we make an open access scientific publication as an output of the project? And could the fee of this open access article be added to the financial plan?
Yes, I will add a little bit about this.
Yes, please.
We've discussed yesterday, of course, that there is, I need to turn on my video and somehow this is not working. For me, anyhow, I will need to work without the video. Yes, yesterday we discussed about these universities and how they are not eligible to apply. And of course, when you are publishing in a scientific journal, there are some scientific standards that need to be respected, including the mentioning of your affiliation with the university and the mentioning of your affiliation with a particular maybe research center of the university, and also funding, etc., etc. We will discuss internally and publish the official answer in the question and answer document, of course, but there are two things to consider. In terms of eligibility of costs, open access scientific publication is not forbidden. It's not in the list of ineligible expenses. So that's something to look into. Naturally, and common sense encourages us to say yes. I mean, if there is a research, we would like to see that this research is published in scientific journals and it becomes a part of the global scientific knowledge. So definitely, I mean, from the programmatic and eligibility of expenses point of view, this is something that can be planned in your projects. But there are going to be some issues when we reach the implementation stage, in particular, if it comes to some universities that the EU as a donor wouldn't like to be associated with. And in those senses, we will probably, and the EU will probably develop a kind of like a unique visibility guide to guide you through the process of publishing, and maybe with some footnotes and some additional explanatory notes that are explaining the specific political situation which we are all aware in Cyprus. So for the time being, our answer to this question is yes. Please plan this. It is possible to include these costs. And when we reach to the final phases of the project, we will liaise among ourselves, and then, I mean, final phases of the assessment process, we will discuss among ourselves and provide some kind of a clear-cut answer to the applicants who had passed into the implementation stage as to what visibility rules to use and what to do in terms of the mentioning of particular universities that EU perhaps wouldn't like to be associated with in terms of the protection of the image of the donor. And what to do in terms of because as far as I know, also most scientific journals nowadays are also asking for the funding information, where this funding coming from and so on and so forth. So an instruction will be published to people that are going to be implementing the projects, not to worry about this at this particular stage. The answer to the question is simply yes, for the time being, it's not ineligible, it can be planned, it's not an obligation either, but it can be planned, and then further details will follow. Thanks.
Thank you, Alexandra. And thank you also for all these questions. I think it's very, very important to be encouraged to ask more, even because, at the end, okay, of course, you need to prepare a good concept note. Of course, you need to have a clear picture of the action and activities that you plan to implement. You need to include all the stakeholders, target groups, and final beneficiaries, and you need to to envisage all the risk, and you need to really have a wide structured picture of your project. But on the other hand, it's very, very important to know what can be financed, what cannot be financed, because at the end, if you sign the grant contract and when we come to the implementation, that will also be very relevant. And as I said, it doesn't mean if you sign the grant contract of EU contribution of 100,000 euros, that this amount will be, that you can take it for granted, that it will be, paid in exact value. So it will be reimbursed basically to you on the basis of actual costs that you will have to prove. You will have to prove each cost that you will have under your project. Okay. So 56 shall be purchased research equipment such as thermal imaging camera, monitoring devices, weather station or laptop for the data collection as part of the practice-based research project. Yes, I would immediately reply yes, even though it's not obligatory. Of course, if you have your own equipment, you can use it, but yes, it is even envisaged to have up to 50% of the total eligible cost possible to be used for procurement of equipment, which is quite a lot. So yes, try to at this stage to think what will you need for your research activities. And yes, under budget heading 3, where we have procurement of supplies, you will at the next stage be able to envisage such costs. Then you will just put budget line, thermal imaging camera, 1 or 2, I don't know how many will you need. You have to justify if you need more than 1, for example, who will be using those cameras. So you will put it in justification, and you will need to calculate the average price in line with the current market standards. So for example, if you do this market analysis now, which I would certainly advise you to do, because you will have a clearer picture of the cost that you should ask. You will have to update it at the time of preparation of the budget in the second stage. Anyhow, yes, please do envisage you have this possibility. It is given by the call for lot number 2 and 3. The procurement of equipment is limited to 30% of the total eligible cost, but under lot 1 you have 50%. It is maximum. Of course, you can ask 5%, 10%, 15% of the total eligible cost. Of course, you will not be crazy and start buying whatever, you will have to kind of justify why you need so many equipment, who will be using this equipment, for which reason, for which activities, because as I said, all the costs that are in the budget needs to be clearly connected with the activities. Okay, 57. Could we allow to open up a website for the dissemination of our research outputs, and could the fee of web profile service be added to the financial plan? I would also say yes, of course, dissemination of the results, the visibility, you will need to respect the visibility that is requested by the visibility guidelines from the EU. And this website will be funded or co-funded by the European Union. So you're promoting what has been budgeted, and you're promoting the EU financing, which is always very welcomed. So yes, why not? It's not obligatory, but you can do it, and you can envisage this cost under budget heading 5, services. So these are services. So the service you're procuring an external expert to set up such website, web page. And even the maintenance, of this web page, because usually if your project will last 2 or 3 years, and if you set up the first half year such web page, then yes, it would be good to envisage the cost of maintenance. Of course, the cost of maintenance can be eligible only until the end of your implementation of your project, but later on you will have to assure from your own resources, and that should be also reflected in the sustainability part of your report. How will you ensure that this website will not be, shut down immediately after the project ends? That should not be the case. So take that also into account. Will you be able to assure sustainability of such web page? If not, better not to have it. Okay. 58. Are we allowed to hire an expert during the implementation stage of the project? Yes. So basically, it is, I think the possibilities are quite wide. The only major restriction, and very important one, is that you don't hire your own staff, the staff of your partner, your affiliated entities, co-applicants. So the ones who are applying jointly referring as applicants, so you are implementing this action with all your resources. You put your resources on the disposal, and you can budget those resources only under budget heading 1 as a part of their regular salary. If you don't have such resources, expertise, it is allowed to to hire and to engage external experts for basically any service that is necessary for you for the implementation of the activities. And it is allowed, but you cannot procure yourself your own stuff. Or, for example, if you maybe have if you have experience and expertise even within your applicants and co-applicants staff, but they are overloaded with work, you don't have enough capacities for such expertise, you can again procure it from outside. What if we may be exceeded the proposed budget? Are there any support aid provided by the contracting authority? As far as I know, there is no any additional support provided by the contracting authority, but that should be verified certainly from the side of the contracting authority. But the only possibility that you will have, which will be allowed under certain circumstances, if well justified, you will be able to make some reallocations. So maybe, I don't know, some seminar or conference will be canceled in Poland, or I don't know. And the airplane tickets are basically, was very expensive for that trip. And if you cannot, usually you would have to propose some other maybe equivalent conference or equivalent activity that could, you cannot just say, okay, this conference is canceled and we are not going there, and you planned it. So you need to try to find the other alternatives. But if not, or if this other alternative is cheaper for travel, then you will have some savings. Also, you can have some savings in organization of seminars, of conferences, for example, rent of premises, maybe the price will go down or up. Yes, which is connected with the not the last question, but one of the questions that are here on the list. You will be in the possibility to reallocate. If you will have some savings from some budget lines or from some budget headings, you will be able to reallocate, but there are certain preconditions. You need to inform the contracting authority. For some major reallocations, you will need to proceed and ask for the addendum to the contract, which is a legal document, and addendum is again legal document, and this procedure could sometimes even take a couple of months. So yes, you will have some possibilities, but all these changes during the implementation will cause, you know, probably some delays or, you know, possible discrepancies and maybe even non-eligible costs. So better to be safe than sorry, but better to try to envisage as much as realistic as possible at this stage. So, okay, 16. Is the co-funding compulsory for the national natural person applicant? Yes, yes. So co-funding is compulsory for either national or natural or legal person. So it is compulsory under the call. Whoever apply, he will need to co-finance the action with minimum 5% of the total eligible costs. Shall we also take into account the rapidly rising inflation rate under these circumstances? Yes, for sure. To say how, I must admit that I don't have such experience with such rapidly rising inflation rate. But yes, you should take that into account.
Yes, I think that we discussed this also a little bit, but one of the info sessions, Ivan has mentioned to you that there is this possibility to plan contingency. Again, emphasizing you are not sending the full budget now, you're only sending an indication of the amount of money that you will be requesting. It can vary 20% plus and minus in the full application stage, but not more than that. But it's always advisable to actually do a little bit of budgeting. It doesn't have to be, you know, to euro cent, but that you know how much money you're actually requesting, and are all these activities that you're proposing to us in concept note stage, can they be done with this money that you're requesting? So it is up to you how to do this budgeting at this stage. But just for you to know, you know, like there is a possibility to request this contingency, and contingency is a budget reserve, basically, you know, like in the household, then you have, you know, somewhere hidden some amount of money, and then all of a sudden you need some money, and then you take this money from this hidden place, and usually you need to ask either, you know, like your family member, your wife or your husband or someone, should we use this saving? The same applies in the situation of contingencies with projects that are funded through Europaid. You are requesting from the contracting authority to use these contingencies. So they need to be justified at the proposal stage. We will discuss this later on when you're invited to submit your full application form. What does it mean? But that's the only way to deal with it. They are not going to increase your grant, the amount that you requested at the end and signed the budget for. It's not going to be increased, so there is a possibility to plan some funds for these contingency purposes. Yeah, thanks.
Maybe if I can just add, so the maximum contingency, possible contingency is 5% of the total eligible costs. So when you will calculate your total budget of the project, you just add 5%. That would be maybe most simplest tool to add this even in this stage. So Alexandra, I think I will need some help. I'm not quite certain that I understand this last question. Shall we make the publications without using our academic affiliation?
Yes, as we discussed, this is the last question as far as I understand. Let me check if there is anything in addition in the chat. No. In terms of finances, as I mentioned, it's not going to be possible for you not to use your academic affiliation in some of the journals, because according to their standards, they are requesting that you always present your academic affiliation. So, I mean, as I said, a clear visibility guide will be published, prepared and published for the publishing in the articles, because there are certain political sensitivities that you are aware of, I'm sure, and that we need to deal with. The publications without using your academic affiliation are possible. That's the only answer I can provide to you at the moment. But if your desire is to go to some journals to publish, it's not going to be possible, because according to their standards, you need to indicate. As I said, I mean, this is something that I wouldn't really advise you to worry about in a lot of detail currently. For the time being, you know, because a concept note is a 5-pager. There's, if you want to publish in some journals, you don't need to indicate which journals, you don't need to indicate, you know, the number of pages or anything like that in such tremendous detail. But of course, you know, like, for the reason of dissemination of information and for the reason of impact of your research projects, you're encouraged to publish. Of course, any researcher wants to publish their articles. So don't, you know, like, you of course, I mean, we will try to find a way that you use your academic affiliation, because that's a common sense thing and it should be done. And so, I mean, I wouldn't encourage you to think about this, that you don't need to use your academic affiliation. We just need to find a way that this academic affiliation can be mentioned, but that also image of the donor is protected. Yeah, so thanks. I mean, let me check once again if there is anything in addition in chat. No, okay, I will stop sharing then the questions. I think we started at 10, it's 11:40 now, according to adult learning standards. I think that we need a little bit of a break. So I would say that maybe we come back at 12. Is that fine with everyone? Excellent.
I hope it's fine, yes. So stay with us. The next session is very, very important for the concept note assessment. So it is very important, of course, at this stage. So stay with us.
Yeah. You can, we can have this, let's say 20-minute break. We'll be back at 12. In the meantime, if you want to do a quiz that we shared with you, that's also, I mean, for people who haven't done it yesterday, that's also something that we are encouraging you to do. We received the results from yesterday. Yes. Also, something before we break that I would like to share with you. Yesterday, and during these days, we're receiving quite a lot of requests, and also our colleagues from Civic Space informed us that they are receiving quite a lot of requests for partnership search. You know, like a researcher from the south or the north would like to find a partner elsewhere. Unfortunately, we do not have available, neither that does the Civic Space or any other complementary project that we are cooperating with, a database of the researchers. However, I mean, we do have a little bit of collective intelligence here, all of us. There is a lot of people who expressed interest to take part in the info sessions, expressed interest to take part in these trainings, lot 1 and 2 and 3, asked some questions on the help desk and so on. So we have this, you know, at least we have this email group. Now, of course, we are not going to use your emails without your permission, but if you want to have, if you have a need to find such a partner, what we can do is we can encourage a little bit peer-to-peer support. So if you can write us, you know, like send us a message on this help desk email, and if you're in such a need, we will share this message with all the emails that we've collected so far from the people who took part either in the info sessions or elsewhere, and then maybe, you know, collectively they could come up with some proposals for your partners. I just wanted to highlight that. If among you today, among the attendees, there is such a need, you can also you know, like explain this to us using the chat or something like that. Thanks. See you then at 12.
We will continue with this concept note preparation training. and continue with this session for the concept note format. Thank you all for staying, and for the ones who could not stay, thank you for informing us, and hopefully more of you will be in the position to look at this video, because it is recording. Okay, so with regards to this concept note format, not turn on the slideshow. Okay, constantly we have some technical issues, but okay, I think it's even good. It looks good. It's big enough like this. So with regards to some technical details for the preparation of the concept note, you should follow the format and instructions. So you have this annex A1 that you should use when you will prepare your concept note, and you should follow the instructions. You should not change questions and things like that. So the format should stay the same. Concept note should include maximum 5 pages. So, but it's not like you can use a smaller size of letters or different format when you can basically try to change this 5 pages format. You will have to follow the exact instructions. So the page should be A4 size with 2 centimeter margins. Font is Arial 10 and single line spacing. So please do follow these exact instructions, because to ensure the equal treatment, because there will probably be a lot of applicants and concept notes submitted, and because everyone have this 5-page possibility to present their project in the best light, taking into consideration all the relevant actors and the activities. In order to secure the equal treatment, everyone should respect these specific instructions. So you should ensure coherence. You should avoid placing one set of information in summary table and different later on elsewhere. We will see summary table later on. You should use the same terms throughout the whole text. You should support your claims and plans through quotes, tables, illustration, if there is such need and possibility, to include illustrations which could help visualize the intention. So you can use some additional tables if they represent something you want to show more clearly. So the concept note should provide the full information on the project, since the evaluation will be based solely on the information provided. So I think we have mentioned many times that the concept note of 5 pages is the only document that needs to be submitted now, of course, with this declaration that is part of that template as well. But this declaration is not anything additional with regards to the content of your project and your concept note. So you cannot submit additional reports, some background documents, anything that could support your application, because it will not be possible. So the first part of the concept note is the summary table, where you should clearly present your result chain. So we talked yesterday about the result chain and result-based management. So you should have a clear picture. That's why I said yesterday it would be good for you even to prepare the log frame matrix at this stage, preferably, to have a clear picture about the impact, outcomes, outputs, and activities, your target groups, your final beneficiaries. You should quantify them, and you should integrate those targets into results. for the result chain, you need to secure all that, and you need to present it properly, because later on you will not be in the position to change a lot. For an evaluator or assessor who can support the evaluators in the assessment of the concept notes, this is for them, this is the summary table is the starting point of your application. So here you should show, you should be clear, you should show your intention, you should be logical, you should be precise. If you want to impress, do it in this table first. For the description of the action, it should be placed on maximum 2 pages. And on these 2 pages, you have clear instruction, what you need to present. You will have to give the background to the preparation of the action, in particular on the sector, on the territory, regional context in which you're developing the project, including key challenges. You should also present key issues. If there is any specific analysis or study carried out to inform the design, of course, mention this, state this, show that you are aware of that with clear quotes and references. So you should briefly outline the intervention logic, indicating the expected results, outcomes, and impact, as well as underlying the main risks and assumptions towards their achievement. So we have talked about the risks, the assumptions for the implementation of the project. So you should have a clear picture. What are your main risks? What are the preconditions or assumptions for the implementation of your project? And in that sense, it would be good to have this intervention logic ready at this stage, so you can summarize it here. List again your plan outputs and outcomes and impact, and you should explain them. So first you need to briefly outline the intervention logic, and then you should go into a bit more details. Of course, it should be in line with the summary table. So each time when you change something, go through the concept note once again to see if you have some discrepancies. Okay, so you should briefly outline the activities proposed, including description of link and relationship between activity clusters. So you should not go into many details because you don't have space. So you should be concrete and precise as possible. You should describe the key stakeholder groups. So you probably remember the stakeholder analysis from yesterday. You need to describe their attitudes towards the action and any consultations held. We basically recommend that you even have a consultation process with the stakeholders, identified stakeholders, prior to the submission, and you can express the results of such or conclusions of such consultations that you have taken their points into account. It would be surely valuable. Okay, finally, you should explain how the action will mainstream the relevant cross-cutting issues. This is also very important. So cross-cutting issues are promotion of human rights, gender equality, democracy, good governance, support to youth, children's rights, and indigenous people, environmental sustainability, and combating AIDS. If there is strong prevalence in the target country or region, you should certainly address and mainstream any of these cross-cutting issues. You don't have to, mainstream all of them if your project is not referring, but try to think in broader sense and how can you tackle it. And you should certainly explain. You cannot just say that you will consider these cross-cutting issues. You need to explain how you plan to consider and include mainstreaming of these cross-cutting issues. You should outline the broad time frame of the action, and you should describe any specific factor taken into account. So you should describe your action in this first stage after the summary on 2 pages, taking into account instructions and some suggestions that we have made. With regards to the relevance of the action, so this is the second part of your concept note. This part is limited to 3 pages. And the relevance of the action have 4 main subtitles. So the first is relevance to the objectives of this call, sectors, teams. Okay, we don't have maybe all of this specified in the guidelines for applicants, but you should refer to the objectives and specific priorities with regards to your lot on which you're applying. Because the specific sectors or teams to which the action must relate are those directly contributing to the achievement of the objectives of the call and priorities of the call, which are described in section 1.2 of the guidelines for applicants. But we have passed in details through all of this yesterday. Then you need to show your relevance of your action to particular needs and constraints of the target country or countries, region, and or relevant sectors. You should include here the synergy with other development initiatives and avoidance of duplication. So we mentioned yesterday that there are reports from the European Commission on the link that was provided on one previous slide that you should check, and you should ensure compatibility and synergy with all these initiatives that are currently ongoing in order to avoid repetition or duplication, overlapping with other similar initiatives. So you need to be complementary with them. You should describe and define the target groups and final beneficiaries. You need to describe their needs, you need to describe their constraints, and state how the action will address these needs. In brief, you should certainly stress if you address some particular added value elements here, because the added value elements have been specified in the guidelines for applicants. We have even put them in one slide, but you can, at the beginning of the guidelines, you can address and see which are the added value elements to which you could address. And certainly it will also be taken into consideration during the assessment or evaluation of your concept notes. So the first relevance that you need to present is relevance to the objectives, sectors, teams, and specific priorities of the call. The format of the concept note is asking you to describe the relevance of the action to the objectives and priorities of the call for proposals. You should make a reference to call for proposals, overall and specific objectives. You cannot only mention it, but you need to explain how your project activities can contribute to these overall and specific objectives, taking into consideration the lot when you're applying. Okay, so describe the relevance of the action to any other specific requirements stated in the guidelines for applicants. And it depends on the lot, and describe which of the expected results referred to in the guidelines for applicants will be addressed. Here in those guidelines, so the current call, there are no expected results set. So this is not relevant for you, but you may refer to the priorities and specific objectives for sure. Okay, then we have the relevance to the particular needs and constraints of the target country or countries, regions, and the relevant sectors, including synergy with other development initiatives and avoidance of duplications. So here you should present tackling several issues. You should state clearly the specific pre-project situation in the target country. So you should be aware and you should show it and present it. What is the situation prior to your project implementation? And you should include quantified data analysis if it is possible, where it is possible. You should provide a detailed analysis of the problems which you're addressing by the action and how they are interrelated at all levels. So the problem analysis needs to be defined and explained, and you need to address those problems by your action and the activities, how you will interrelate with your proposed activities. You should refer to any significant plans which have been undertaken at national, regional, or local level, which are relevant to the action, and describe how the action will relate to such plans. So try to see if on the level, any of the levels have been some major plans undertaken, and you should show how that you're aware of that and how will you contribute to and be complementary with such plans. Where you are continuing maybe some previous action, you should clearly indicate how you intend to build on the results of this previous action. So you should refer to the main conclusion and recommendations of any evaluations carried out. If there have been any evaluations of success of such actions, previous actions, you should refer to that and to indicate how you intend to continue and to build what has been already achieved. Okay, where the action is part of a larger program, you should clearly explain how it fits or how it will be coordinated with that program or any other planned project. So you should specify the potential synergies with other initiatives, in particular by the European Commission. So we already stressed that. And you should be complementary. So you should explain the complementarity with other initiatives supported by the European Union and by other donors as well. You can support your claims with some studies, papers, plans, some previous experience, and where possible, you can plan collaboration, stakeholder involvement, and learning. But in brief, that is for sure. Then you need to describe and define the target groups and final beneficiaries, their needs and constraints, and state how the action will address these needs. So you should, apart from the stakeholders, you need to take into account the target groups and the final beneficiaries. And if you want to organize the text, to make visible your points, it is even advisable to use a table. And you need to present some details. So, for example, you need to give a description of each of the target groups and final beneficiaries. You need to quantify them whenever that is possible. And identify the needs and constraints of each of the target groups and final beneficiaries. You should certainly demonstrate the relevance of the proposal to the needs and constraints of the target groups and final beneficiaries, and explain if you had any participatory process or you plan to have participatory process, ensuring participation by the target groups and final beneficiaries. So you should describe each of these groups, identify their needs and constraints, and demonstrate the relevance of your action to the needs and constraints. Okay, we already mentioned that you should address any added value elements to which you're contributing with regards to the ones which are specified in the guidelines for applicants. Okay, you also have, in the call for proposals, you have a checklist, and even in this template at the very end, you have the checklist where this checklist is basically provided for the self-guidance purposes. So you should delete these instructions and the checklist for the self-guidance at the end of the template before submission. Of course, they are not part of your concept note, they are just part of the template. And each question should be answered in the concept note. You should use appropriate font, all these instructions that are given to you. Please take care to follow them very, very carefully. And you should not, in any case, exceed this maximum number of pages, because in that case, your proposal could be automatically rejected. Better stick to the rules and try to point out what is relevant and what is important under these sections and under these 5 pages. Okay, we already tackled this possibility for change from the point of view of concept note stage and the second full application stage changes. Okay, so the elements which are outlined, which are stipulated in the concept note, may not be modified in the full application, except of some specific, in some specific circumstances. So these following changes could be acceptable. So you can change the EL contribution that you have envisaged in the concept note stage, but not more than 20% of your initial estimate. Lead applicant can adapt the percentage of co-financing required within the minimum and maximum amount and percentages of co-financing. So percentage of co-financing is minimum 5% to 40%. The lead applicant may add or remove or replace one or more co-applicants or affiliated entities only in duly justified cases. So basically, the ones that you will select as your partners, you should stick to that until the very end and throughout the implementation. Basically, it is not allowed to change it, only in some exceptional cases if they do not exist anymore, or maybe if it is a natural person, in some cases like very, very bad health issues or something really, really not normal, not regular situation. It's just, you cannot say we don't agree with each other and that's why we don't want to cooperate. So try to avoid this, make sure the partnership formed is solid and long-term. So in this case, even if you will, if you act with the partner, of course, you should still have a partner, even though if you can only change the partner in this lot 1, because it is obligatory to act with the partner. So the removal as such is not applicable for lot 1. You can add additional partner or you can replace the existing partner, but in extraordinary circumstances. And this changed partner should be of similar nature than the initial one, because on the basis of this partnership, you have been scored and you have been selected for this second stage. That is why you cannot change much. Because if it was like that at the very beginning, maybe you would not come to the second stage. So you could adjust the duration of the action. So the duration is from 12 to 36 months, but only in unforeseen circumstances, which are outside the scope of the applicants following the submission of concept note and require such adaptation, and may cause a risk that the action will not be carried out. In any case, due duration of the action should remain within the limits which are imposed by the guidelines for applicants, so for 12 until 36 months. But you should really do such change only in, again, some exceptional unforeseen circumstances, because you will have to justify it. So try to envisage at the very beginning the exact number of months or years, the duration of your action. And as I said, maybe you don't recall, but I have stressed it during yesterday's session that it is better to envisage longer duration than you initially plan. It will just help you, during the implementation, not to have such issues, problems that you will have to extend, because also there are some conditions under which you can extend your action after you sign the contract or at the very end of the implementation. So better to, when you calculate the duration, add 1, 2, 3 months, even half year, I don't know, depends on the duration, initial duration. But of course, you should not go beyond 36 months. Okay, at any time you can replace your own contribution by other donors' contribution, so that is good. But as I said, other donors are not EU, so those are other donors. But an explanation or justification of the relevant replacement or any adjustment should be included in Annex A2, which is the full application at the second stage. And you should explain and justify why you are making such change. If this explanation or justification would not be sufficient, or the evaluation committee considered it not sufficient, your proposal may be rejected. So that's why it's very important to avoid this if possible. Some tips for good concept note. So follow, allow, learn, have. So follow the templates, the instructions in the document without exception. You should allow sufficient time for preparation. So I would say that you should start preparing immediately. So at least to have a picture of what you need to do. Don't think it's 5 pages, I will do it quickly. It's not that kind of process. So try to start as soon as possible in order, to have good quality proposal, good quality concept note, and to be selected for the second stage. You should learn about the EU procurement procedures. I already tackled this because it is important for planning. Since I said the EU procurement procedures should be in line with Annex 4 of the grant contract, but on the other hand, take into account that each procedure that you will have to do will involve a certain period of time, just because you cannot come into the store where they are selling research equipment and to buy whatever you think it's relevant. You will have to have a procedure for that. So you will have to prepare the tender documentation. You will need to invite the potential suppliers in this case, or service providers if you're procuring services. Then you will need to give them enough time to reply, to submit an offer. Like here, you have some time to prepare the concept note. Okay, it should not be that long, but depending on the value of the process, sometimes it can be 10 days. Sometimes in some cases can be even 30 days that you need to allow them to prepare the offers. Then you have to evaluate it. And then at the end, you need to write a report and sign the contract and then to start implementing it. So in some cases, it can even take a couple of months. This is just to have a clearer picture about planning. Because if at the very beginning you need this equipment, you need to take into account that probably first month you will not maybe even start working on these documents. And then when you start working on this document, you will need some time to prepare it if you don't have experience. In that sense, I don't know, maybe it would be even good to think if you really don't have experience in procurement, EU procurement rules, I would even suggest that you think of procuring or envisaging such cost for such services, like you will externally engage a procurement expert who will support you in these procurement procedures, especially if you have a lot and if the value is high. So yes, this is very important for planning. So that's why I'm saying take more time than you think that it is necessary. Don't take the minimum, that's for sure. Okay, on the basis of a market research, it is the best way to have a good idea about your total budget amount. We talked about this, but just to summarize everything on this slide. Some tips are also not to overpromise, because what you promise, you will have to achieve. So be realistic as possible. Because what are you proposing now? Okay, in the concept note and later on in the full application stage, which cannot differ a lot, it will become the part of your grant contract. So your description of the action as part of the full application will be Annex 1 of your grant contract, and it will become your contractual obligation. So you will have to fulfill in line with the general conditions and special conditions, which are also part and annex of your grant contract. Will be. Show that research has been undertaken on problems identification, making clear reference to information sources and methodologies used. You should ensure the components naturally link together. You should ensure the coherence, we said, between problems, activities, and expected results, and coherence also with regards to terminology. Try to use simple language, understandable for everyone. You should make detailed reference to your past experience and how they are relevant to the proposed action, if you have such. Probably you will have. Highlight your comparative advantages, and don't forget the visibility requirements. Some lessons learned from some previous calls. What we have stressed at the very beginning, at the first slide, that you should carefully read the guidelines for applicants and the annexes. I know there is a lot of materials, but they really include the answers to many of your questions. So I would say that you have a lot of reading to do, but at least, to go through the guidelines for applicants thoroughly. You have a lot of additional tools. These are the questions and answers that will be published from the side of the contracting authority, and they will basically become a part of the documentation of this call. And you will find a lot of relevant answers there. And you can also always ask additional questions later on. Consult the questions and answer document. Okay, I said that. Make sure to use the templates provided and abide by the instructions. Okay, we said that a couple of times. If you have questions, additional questions, you can always use help desk support. At the end of the presentation, you will have an email and also the email for these questions and answers. So you will have all this information at the last couple of last slides. You should prepare your concept notes carefully to ensure the validity at the full application stage. We said the elements of the concept note can only be modified to the margin in the full application. And you should prepare your concept notes, keeping the logical framework matrix in mind. Okay, you should integrate project management. So you will have to manage this project. You will have to show, even to prove later on that you have capacities for project management. For communication, you should integrate stakeholder involvement activities in your overall action plan. Consider timing, any timing, so to prepare such a document, which is concept note, and the timing in proposal of the duration of your action. Don't take things for granted. So consider all that has been explained even today with regards to the budget, the reimbursement on the basis of the actual costs, and that you will have to secure the financial continuation until the project end. At the very end, you will basically receive the eligible part of your total budget proposed. All the target groups, final beneficiaries within the scope of the action should be listed. You should quantify data for each target group and final beneficiaries. If you're not certain in your affiliation, better not to include any affiliated entities. I explained that already. Associates can be planned, but they are not mentioned in the concept note phase. A lead applicant should sign the declaration on behalf of all applicants. So only the lead applicant is signing the declaration. So make sure that co-applicants will indeed be ready to take part in the full application stage. Okay. Okay. So we now came to the latest, let's say, part of our presentation today, which is submission. So concept note together with the declaration by the lead applicant must be submitted online via Prospect. So we had very valuable session by Nilay presenting how you should register to PADOR, when it would be the best to register. It's, I would also say, immediately, and then how to upload your proposal into Prospect. With regards to questions, so apart from the fact that there are a lot of questions that have been asked during previous sessions, so there were info sessions on 9th of March, online sessions. So there were a couple of more online or in-person sessions held, and we have collected all the questions that was raised during those sessions. And also the questions that were received through the help desk, and also questions that will be received by the contracting authority on this official email. But I must stress that all the questions that you might have, you should ask by 29th of March. So it is stated in the indicative timetable of the guidelines for applicants, and it is by template of the guidelines regulated that it cannot be later than 21 days before the deadline for the submission of concept notes, in order for the contracting authority to be able to prepare all the answers and replies, and to provide you at least 11 days before the deadline for submission of concept note, which is 8th of April. So 8th of April is the last date when the contracting authority will publish probably the last set of questions, because since there are really a lot of questions, even until now, the contracting authority will most probably have two sets of questions published. And what is very important here, in order to ensure equal treatment of applicants, the contracting authority cannot give you a prior opinion on the eligibility of lead applicants of co-applicants or affiliated entities. So eligibility criteria with regards to applicants cannot be provided to you, even if you ask such direct questions. Also, the eligibility of actions. So you can ask, can I propose this? Can I propose that? But basically, the contracting authority cannot reply you. They can refer you to the specific section of the guidelines for applicants. Maybe they can stress that it is not forbidden. If it is not forbidden, if it is ineligible, they will point out it is in the list of, please refer to the list of ineligible actions or activities, or costs as well. So such questions will not be directly answered. Also, it is not allowed to have individual replies given to questions. So all questions and answers will be published on the website of the DG International Partnership on this link, and also on the web page of our GST project. So make sure you follow from time to time if some answers have been already published in near future. All questions related to registration in PADO or online submission via prospect should be addressed to the IT help desk. So contracting authority has their own IT help desk. They have online support, and surely you should contact them if you will have any difficulties registering or submitting online your concept note. Okay, now we have concept note assessment, but basically we will provide you here questions that you might ask yourself, and just to show you what the assessors and the evaluators will take into account when they will assess your concept notes.
Yeah, before we proceed to this final session, there were two questions about this support. What I want to stress is that there is this functional mailbox, reform, EC, etc., which Ivana presented. You can use this to ask questions. That's an official channel of communication. And rules are always that if you write there, you will not receive a direct answer, but you will receive an answer through this publishing of the Q&A. On the other hand, as I mentioned a few times, we are running this help desk info email as well. And because we are not contracting authority, we are a project, we are trying to answer those questions that we see that are a little bit urgent immediately, you know. So to clarify that, another thing that I want to clarify is that because there were a couple of questions about booking an appointment with the EU grant support team, is there any set deadline for that? We would prefer if you could let us know that you need support by the end of this month. You know, so if you have a particular support, if you want to book an appointment, please do that right away, today or tomorrow, or, you know, like, I mean, I'm not saying that you need to write today, but just, you know, like, do it as soon as you can. It's possible to book online appointment. It's possible to book physical appointment. rules that are applicable for the entering of the office are the same as in the north part of Cyprus. So in that sense, nothing above that. We will not be asking you for PCR test or something like that, because there was a question about it. So I mean, the rules that are applicable for entering of the office buildings in the northern part of Cyprus apply also to us. If you need registration, support to get registration in Pador and to get an Europaid ID number, pretty much the same. You can either contact us directly using this help desk email. And then, you know, like if you want to have an individual session, let's schedule that. If you want to have an online session, let's schedule that. But just as I said, please do that as soon as possible. The email, which Ivana can share with you again on the chat, is the same. It's helpdesk. Niras.com. Yes. So
we actually have it at the last slide. So
yeah, maybe you want to share it in the chat
okay.
as well.
Okay.
So you can just write to us, and that's pretty much how we can be accessed. Yeah. So these were 3 questions asked about the help desk support. Yeah. I guess we can proceed now with the final session.
Okay, thanks. So for the concept note assessment, what is important, just to briefly explain the assessment process. So your concept notes are assessed or evaluated by the evaluators and assessors. Their average scores are summed up. So at least 3 of them or 2 of them should assess your concept notes. And their concept notes are ranked according to the average scores. So the proceedings of the evaluation exercise are very confidential. Of course, the evaluation as such is confidential, and it should, all the parties should respect the principles of confidentiality, impartiality, and no conflict of interest. For example, if the evaluator or assessor has been given a proposal by the applicant or some co-applicants or affiliated entities with which they might have a conflict of interest, they should immediately declare it and not to participate in assessment of such proposal. The lead applicants whose applications have not been pre or provisionally selected. So if you don't if you're not invited to participate in the second stage, you will be informed about the scores obtained in the evaluation, including a breakdown by section and subsection of the evaluation grid. So you will be informed about the scores that you have received for each section and subsection. We will have later on how this section and subsections look like. Of course, you may be also given some comments and justification provided by the evaluation committee why you haven't been provisionally or pre-selected. Just to stress that only concept notes which receive a score of at least minimum 30 points in the evaluation are considered for pre-selection. So maximum total score for the concept note is 50, 25 per each section. You will see later on. There are 2 sections, and you need to score and receive at least 30 points in order to, to even be considered to enter in the second stage. You should bear in mind that your score, which is received under the relevance section, so this is one of the 2 sections in the concept note. Relevance section is the scores or the points that you will receive are automatically transferred to full application phase evaluation. So this is quite important. Okay, both sections are very important, but this relevance one will be assessed only in the concept note stage. It will not be assessed again in the full application phase, because it's logical. If your action is relevant, to the specifics of this call, if it is established at the stage of the concept note, this is automatically transferred in the second stage. How to use the assessment grid? You can self-score yourself. You will not be assessing your proposal, but you can ask any of your colleagues, to provide some critical remarks and to self-score yourself. So that in that sense, it would be good to have the concept note even ready earlier, so you can maybe give to some colleagues to read it and to simulate the assessment, reading and replying on the questions that are envisaged in the grid. Okay. So this is the first part of the grid with regards to the relevance of the action, which is automatically transferred in the second stage. The maximum score for the relevance is 25. And the first subsection is multiplied by 2 because of its importance. So pay even more attention to explain briefly but precisely how the relevant is your proposal to the objectives and priorities of the call. Are the expected results of the action aligned with the priorities defined in the guidelines for applicants? There are just few questions, but I don't think I need to read them now. You will certainly take a look, I'm quite sure, later on. In either case, we already mentioned these parts, which are important parts of each of the section in our earlier slides. For the design of the action, also the total score is 20, maximum score is 25. And there are also 5 questions here to which your concept note should be addressed, and they will be assessed by the assessors and evaluators during the evaluation process. Okay, so we basically pass through all these important parts of your concept note. Concepts which we could stress is for you to be in your concept note to be relevant. Your activities should be closely linked to the objectives to be reached. You should be credible. In sense, your proposal should be understandable for non-experts in that specific research field. For example, they should be easy to interpret. You need to be consistent. So you should be consistent throughout your proposal from the summary part until the end. And you need to be coherent. And here are also some additional questions. So I can say that you really have a lot of tools, for you to focus and to see what will be, what the assessors are basically looking for when they are assessing, in this case, relevance. So I think it's important, so I will read it. So do the objectives and priorities outlined in the application follow the objectives and priorities laid down in the guidelines for each lot? Are there specific references to relevant sections in the guidelines? So you should put specific references. This is always encouraged. Does the application address the needs and constraints of the applicants, target groups, and final beneficiaries? How well are the needs and constraints identified or defined and addressed? Is the information provided on local conditions comprehensive and concrete? Is data presented to convince on the necessity of the proposed intervention? Links and or duplications with other interventions, are they envisaged? Are they explained? How well are those involved in defined and proposed to be addressed? Are the target groups clear and quantified, if possible, and seem comprehensive and strategic to the action? And the appropriateness of the proposed intervention strategy. Okay, this was with regards to relevance, and this is with regards to questions with regards to design of the action. So the questions could be, are the problems to be addressed clearly outlined? Does the proposed intervention strategy reflect the problems identified in the situation analysis? Is additional information needed on activities planned? Are any external factors considered or analyzed? Are stakeholders mentioned and analyzed? Are the activities feasible and do they make sense? Are the activities sufficient to reach the planned objectives and results? If not, are complementary measures described? Concreteness or level of detail of the planned activities and connectivity between components. Feasibility of the proposed project duration. Is it in line with the proposed action plan? Internal logic of the proposed intervention strategy in terms of formulating connected, concrete, and time-bound activities, achievable and measurable results, and project-specific objectives. Are the results clear, measurable, and realistic? So this is with regards to design. Okay, we just have a couple of more slides. So you will be notified on the results of the concept note phase. So you should know that, okay, as I mentioned, the minimum score is 30 points. But apart from the fact, also the available financial allocation per lot is also to be considered, because the number of concept note will most probably have to be reduced, taking into account the ranking. So on the basis of your scores, you will be ranked. And all the amounts that will be asked for grants from each applicant will be cumulatively summarized, and the requested contribution should be superior or equal to 200% and inferior or equal to 220% of the available budget for each lot of this call for proposal. So basically, even if you are invited in the second full application phase, it doesn't necessarily mean that you will receive the grant, of course. And why more of applications are pre-selected for this second phase is because maybe the quality of full application will not be satisfactory. Maybe some of them will be late in submission of their proposals, so some of them maybe will be administratively not compliant. So that's why from 200 to 220%, for example, for lot 1, we have 500,000 euros available for lot 1 for all the applications. And then the contracting authority will make a ranking list and invite all the applications whose value is maximum at the end 1 million euro. but you know, it's like double, double of the available amount. Lead applicants will receive a letter indicating the reference number of their application and the respective results. This letter will automatically appear online in the prospect profile of the lead applicant. Okay, the pre-selected lead applicants will subsequently be invited to submit a full application. How does the application process look? So once your concept note is submitted, it will be checked for administrative purposes. This is the first administrative check. Some clarification may be requested. So the contracting authority may write you and request you some additional information or something in order to, you know, to clarify if there is such need to see this administrative check. Then your concept note will be evaluated if you pass this administrative check against the criteria which are set out in guidelines. So we pass through this criteria. And then if you pass in the following phase, you will be asked to submit the full application, which will then be evaluated under step 2. If you pass this phase, so step 2, eligibility check will be done. That is step 3. What is the eligibility check? It means that all what you have envisaged, described, all the requirements that you have to satisfy, you will have to prove with documentation. If you are pre-selected for contracting, the contracting authority may ask for some budget revisions and further clarifications. And that will be the final budget included in the contract. And then it comes to the contract signature and the implementation, which is basically the start. What follows if you pass the concept note phase? Just in some more details. So you will have to submit the full application. It is Annex A2, which needs to be followed from the call. The template should be followed. It again has an administrative check as in step 1. So this is step 2. And the full application that pass the administrative check are evaluated based on 2 criteria: selection criteria and the work criteria. Selection criteria consist of financial and operational capacity. What does it mean? As I mentioned, you need to have stable sources of funding in order to, you know, to pay all the expenditures under this project, even though you will get pre-financing and most probably will get further financing, interim financing, but at the very end, a part of financing will be paid only after the approval and verification of all the expenditures in the final report. So you need to have a stable sources of funding, and you need to have operational capacity, management capacity to implement this project. And on the basis of selection criteria, if you pass selection criteria, then you will be assessed in line with the award criteria. So what will be evaluated under award criteria is the quality of the application in relation to the objectives and priorities set forth in the guidelines. They include relevance of the action. I already said this score is taken from the concept note, the same score. It's not re-evaluated again. Then award criteria is the design of the action, effectiveness and feasibility of the action, sustainability, and budget and cost effectiveness. So you can consider the award criteria in the guidelines for applicants on these pages if you are interested what comes next. If you pass the full application phase, what follows? So after the evaluation, the table will be drawn up, listing the applications ranked according to their score, so ranking list. The highest scoring application will be provisionally selected until the available budget for each lot of the call for proposals is reached. In addition, there is a reserve list. So now we don't have this double possibility to invite double applicants that has passed the full application phase, but only to the maximum available for that lot. But in addition, usually a reserve list is prepared, you know, in case if under step 3, where you check the eligibility on the basis of all the documents that needs to be supplied, then it can happen that some applicants do not satisfy the eligibility criteria, and then some others from the reserve list can be invited to sign the grant contract. Or if some more funds become available during the validity period. So as I mentioned, explained yesterday, so contracting authority reserves the right to reallocate from one lot to another if there will not be enough applications of sufficient quality from you know, to disburse all the money that is envisaged under lot 2, for example. It can be transferred to lot 1 if there are much more quality proposals under lot 1. If you pass the full application phase, as I said, eligibility verification is performed on the basis of supporting documents, and only the applications that have been provisionally selected according to their score and within the available budget will be asked to participate in this step 3. Any rejected applicant is replaced by the next best placed application on the reserve list that falls within the available budget. Eligible applicants receive an award letter from the contracting authority, and the grant agreement or the grant contract is prepared for signature. And what after the grant award? As we already stressed that you have certain responsibilities for sure if you sign the grant contract, that is a legal document, and you as a lead applicant will become the beneficiary of the grant, the main beneficiary, which will be called coordinator. The contracts are signed in the name of partnership by the lead applicant. So only the coordinator is countersigning the grant contract with the contracting authority in the name of all the partners, co-applicants. He's the sole interlocutor. He's the only one who will officially communicate with the contracting authority, so the coordinator, and it represents and acts on behalf of any other co-beneficiary and coordinate the design and implementation of the action. I mentioned many times that the grant contract is contractual obligation, and that you are entering into contractual relation with the contracting authority. It's very important to stress. It's not like I'm applying for a project, I will receive some EU money and everything will be great. It would be good if it ends like that. It can end like that, but you need to be aware of all the roles and responsibilities that you will have, the possible constraints. So you need to be aware that this is really you know, an official thing, a legal thing that you will have to respect and follow if you receive such possible opportunity. The beneficiaries will have to implement the action in accordance with the description of the action. As I said, it becomes annex of your grant contract and the terms and conditions of the grant contracts. Grant beneficiary or coordinator will be responsible for implementing the action, and he retains the ownership of its results. So, okay, we came to the very end. On last couple of slides, we just have these emails that you can contact us on the help desk, and but I would like you to put one of these 3 emoticons in chat if you are willing to, just to show us if you feel ready, or at least a bit more ready to prepare and to start preparing your concept notes. And I have seen that we have received a lot of questions. So maybe just to pass through all the slides. Okay, questions, but just to have, so you have this help desk support from the GST project. My colleague Alexander has already explained the modalities of such support on this email address, preferably by 1st of April, so we can organize and help as many as applicants as possible. You will be informed on the available time slot, and also to mention that there is civic space support, which they have developed the mainstreaming guidelines on cross-cutting issues for gender mainstreaming, ecology mainstreaming, and youth mainstreaming. It has been shared, the links, if I'm not wrong, has been shared yesterday. But you can also contact Civic Space to make use of these guides. So these are the contact details. And they plan to hold advocacy workshops for potential applicants that are interested in developing or improving advocacy strategies. And these are some tentative dates. But if you are willing or interested in participation, you should surely contact them through this email address and follow their webpage. And we wish you good luck. But first, to reply on the questions.
Yes, we received a couple of questions during this session on the assessment. I will try to share them now with you. Okay. Okay, so question number 66, what is the maximum point for the inclusion of the added value elements? It's 5 points. 5 points in maximum. Question number 67, what if our proposal is consisted of highly remarkable assessment criteria for the vast majority of the elements, but it has shortcomings relevant to the scope of the field proposed? Would you please give us more justification on this matter, please? Okay, I will try to open the guidelines again, just to point you to the, I mean, you've already seen it on the slides, but just to point you to the section of the guidelines where the evaluation process is explained. There are various subheadings here. One quality criteria is relevance, another quality criteria is design of the action. There are a certain number of points assigned to every question. Added value elements, for example, is question 1.4. It has 5 points in maximum. Maximum number of points that you can have is 50. Minimum number that is expected for you to pass into the next selection process is 30. And there are no other requirements. You know, there's no minimum points that you need to have in any of the questions. In that sense, maybe you have 25 points, the maximum under the relevance, and maybe you have, you know, it's not going to happen, but 5 points in total in the design of the action. It will be summed up, and that will be your final score for the assessment. So in that sense, it's quite possible that you're excellent in some of the aspects of the assessment, and that you're really, really poor in some elements of the assessment. It will be just summed up. Number 68, does the grant support team search only on novel project proposals, or are there any alternative projects options to recommend to us? I will again go back to the guidelines just to point you to the section of the guidelines. If you can see on your screens, when we are talking about lot 1, there is an explanation here as to what kind of projects are expected, and you will see that there is a sentence here which says be a novel project and not a repetition of a previously completed or a published research project. We've explained this previously. It doesn't have to mean that this is maybe not a follow-up of a previous research, but it simply cannot be a repetition of a previously fully completed research and previously published research project. In that sense, the answer to the question is yes, but please understand this novel, characteristic of novel, as not being unique and never happening before in the world. It can be a follow-up research as long as it is not a repetition of a research already done. Full repetition of a research already done. Okay. To go back to questions then again, 69, what if the output of our proposal could offer a particular policy guidelines? Is this aspect compulsory during the assessment process? It is not compulsory, but however, you can plan in your project to offer a particular policy guide. Number 70, should we use or disseminate the outputs of the proposal as part of the decision-making process in the energy policy design for the Republic of Cyprus and the northern part of Cyprus? Dissemination is something that, you know, like you will need to explain in your concept notes, how you plan to do this, the characteristics and the specific details of that activity in particular, that will be up to you to explain in the proposal. And number 71, that was the last question. How can we outline or highlight the significance of the bicommunal aspect of our project research proposal? Are there any recommendations, please? Yes, let's try to open this template for the concept notes. This is the template. I'm just browsing through it so that you can see description of the action, maximum 2 pages, relevance of the action, maximum 3 pages, relevance to the particular needs, synergy with other EU initiatives, target groups, particular added value elements, the 3 questions that you need to answer. When you go to the end, let's say the end of the, you will see instructions for drafting of the concept notes. In the relevance for the action in these 3 pages, you can see this relevance to the objective, specific priorities of the call for proposals. And this is the part where you're explaining your relevance to the overall objective of the call for proposals and priorities, as one of them is bicommunal research activity. You will highlight in this particular part how your project addresses and mainstreams a bicommunal research element in the research itself and in any other planned activity. I'm inviting you basically to go through this templates yourself, just to see, you know, how it looks and what needs to be completed. And when you go and see all these questions, it gives you a very straightforward instruction as to how to complete the concept note. Let me see if there was anything else. No, that was the last question. Yeah, thank you, Ivana, very much for the presentation, and also, of course, to all the participants. Do you have any other questions? I know that this has been a lot of content really. But you know, like, there is going to be a recording of this training made available to you, so you can listen to it at your own pace and within, you know, like your own time. If there was anything that was left unclear, you've already received PowerPoint presentations. Use them also for your own individual learning. And then hopefully, you know, like, this is going to become something that is more familiar to you. Many new words, many, you know, a lot of terminology and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, this is not nuclear physics. We've received a lot of really good proposals in the previous call, Civil Society 7. So it means that there is really a lot of intellectual capacity on the island to develop these proposals, and I'm sure that, you know, after this initial shock of all this information, especially if you are new in this proposal development business, just use your own common sense, try to present why this proposal is important, why is it relevant for this particular call, and try to sketch down what you actually want to do. At the end of the day, as I said, this is a 5-pager. Not such an effort to develop it. Sometimes it's difficult to shorten, especially if you like narration and if you like writing a lot of things. But not impossible, and it's an effort that requires a little bit of thinking and designing and planning, but at the end of the day, I'm sure that you will be able to fulfill this task ahead of you. As I said, we can try to offer some support in liaising among all the people who shown interest in this call. In terms of partnership search, if this is something that you need. This help desk is still operational and running, so please let us know if you need any additional support. And I wish you good luck in the application process, and hopefully, you know, like there will be an opportunity for us to meet when it comes to the full application form, trainings and info sessions and preparation for the next step in this submission of the proposals process. Thanks. Have a good afternoon. And as I said, let us know if there is anything that we can further support you with. We will share now the evaluations with you. If I could just ask our Zoom operators to just share the link for the evaluation. So those of you who are, you know, like still present with us, please, we would kindly ask you to fill in the evaluation form sheets. And yeah. The sheet is now the evaluation sheet is now available. Please download it. You can complete it. It's straightforward. It uses Microsoft Forms. Results are immediately calculated, so that's very convenient that we have such technology available nowadays. We will also send this link to the other participants who were maybe joining us today and yesterday at certain points. It will take us a little bit of time to edit the video from today, but you can expect that you will receive the video early next week as well. We will share today the video from the day 1 of the training. Yes, and also you have this quiz. You can test a little bit of your knowledge. You can browse through this chat to find it if you want to do that. And that's it from my side. Thanks to all my colleagues. Again, very much thanks to the translators as well, and to technical support who helped organize these trainings. On Monday, we will have a training that is dedicated to Lot 2. You're welcome to join if you want to, of course. And that's it. Wish you good luck and a nice weekend ahead of us. Thanks.
Thank you, Alexandra. Thanks to everyone. Bye.